Most people believe that seeing reality as it truly is must be an advantage. We are taught that truth liberates, that illusions enslave, and that clarity is the highest human virtue. But history suggests a more troubling pattern. Societies do not run on facts alone. Individuals do not wake up each morning powered by objective data. What actually sustains large-scale cooperation, long-term sacrifice, and psychological resilience is not reality itself, but the stories we tell about reality. When those stories dissolve under the pressure of relentless truth, something subtle but dangerous begins to erode. For most of human history, reality was filtered through myth, religion, tradition, and collective imagination. These filters did not merely distort the world, they made it livable. They provided meaning where none was visible, order where chaos dominated, and purpose in the face of suffering. A farmer who believed the gods controlled the rain could endure drought with patience and hope. A soldier who believed in eternal glory could walk toward death with courage. A mother who believed suffering had cosmic significance could survive unbearable loss. These beliefs were often factually wrong, but psychologically effective. They transformed brute existence into a meaningful narrative. Modern humans pride themselves on tearing away these veils. Science teaches us that the universe is indifferent, that suffering has no cosmic purpose, and that consciousness itself may be nothing more than biochemical processes. This knowledge is powerful, but it comes at a cost. When reality is stripped of narrative, it does not automatically become empowering. For many, it becomes paralyzing. If there is no higher meaning, why sacrifice? If there is no ultimate justice, why restrain desire? If life is a brief chemical accident between two voids, why endure pain rather than escape it? This is not a philosophical question alone, it is a biological and social one. The human brain evolved not to see truth, but to survive. Accuracy was always secondary to usefulness. If a false belief increased cooperation, reduced anxiety, or motivated action, it was often favored by evolution. Seeing reality as it is was never the default setting of the human mind. It is a recent experiment, and we are still living inside its consequences. As individuals gain clearer insight into how systems truly function, economies driven by algorithms, politics shaped by manipulation, identities influenced by marketing, they often experience disillusionment rather than liberation. The realization that much of life is governed by impersonal forces can drain motivation. People begin to feel like replaceable components in vast systems they neither understand nor control. Awareness increases, agency shrinks. This is the paradox of modern clarity. The more we know, the less powerful we often feel. At the societal level, shared illusions have always acted as social glue. Nations, money, human rights, and corporations exist not because they are physical realities, but because millions believe in the same story simultaneously. These stories require a degree of suspension of disbelief. When people begin to see them as mere constructs, their emotional commitment weakens. A flag becomes just colored cloth. A law becomes just ink on paper. A promise becomes a strategic statement rather than a moral bond. Society can survive skepticism, but it cannot survive total disbelief. Technology accelerates this process. Algorithms expose contradictions, reveal hypocrisy, and flatten hierarchies of knowledge. Nothing remains sacred for long. Every belief can be fact-checked, mocked, or deconstructed within seconds. While this creates a more informed population, it also creates a more cynical one. Cynicism is not neutral. It corrodes trust, and trust is the foundation of every complex human system. Without trust, cooperation collapses into short-term self-interest. The cost is also deeply personal. When people see reality without comforting narratives, they often turn inward, not toward wisdom, but toward distraction. Entertainment, consumption, and constant stimulation become substitutes for meaning. If life has no story, at least it can be filled with noise. This is not hedonism born of joy, but anesthesia born of emptiness. A society that understands reality but cannot emotionally process it risks becoming functional yet hollow. Yet the danger is not truth itself. The danger lies in exposing reality faster than we develop new frameworks to live with it. In the past, when old myths collapsed, new ones emerged. Today, we are exceptionally good at destroying narratives and exceptionally poor at creating shared replacements. We tell people that life has no inherent meaning, but we fail to offer tools for constructing personal meaning responsibly. We reveal that moral systems are human inventions, but we do not teach how to choose values without absolute authority. Seeing reality as it is requires psychological maturity that societies do not automatically possess. Without emotional resilience, philosophical literacy, and ethical training, raw truth can destabilize rather than enlighten. It can create a population that is informed but directionless, awake but exhausted, free but deeply anxious. The hidden cost, then, is not ignorance lost, but meaning unpaid for. Reality does not come with instructions. When we remove illusions, we must consciously replace them with understanding, compassion, and responsibility. Otherwise, clarity becomes a burden rather than a gift. And humanity may discover that seeing everything clearly is not the same as knowing how to live. Reality was once filtered through myths, religions, and shared stories that softened its sharpest edges. Today, those filters are dissolving. Science, data, and relentless transparency promise liberation, yet they expose something far more unsettling. The world is not built around human meaning. This realization does not arrive gently, it arrives as a slow erosion of comfort, as the collapse of the stories that once told us who we are and why we matter. Seeing reality as it is does not automatically make us wiser or kinder. Often, it makes us anxious, disoriented, and deeply alone. When the universe is revealed as indifferent, when history appears as a sequence of blind processes, rather than moral progress, the human mind struggles to cope. Knowledge expands faster than wisdom, and clarity increases, while purpose evaporates. For most of history, people did not need to understand reality accurately in order to survive. They needed beliefs that created cooperation, obedience, and hope. Myths were not bugs in the system, they were the operating system. They told farmers that drought had meaning, soldiers that death had glory, and rulers that power had divine approval. These stories were not true in a scientific sense, but they were effective. Today, we are dismantling them with extraordinary speed. We now know that diseases are not punishments, that wars are not destiny, and that humans are not the center of creation. Yet, as we strip away illusions, we rarely replace them with emotionally sustainable alternatives. We tell people what is false, but we hesitate to tell them how to live once the false is gone. The cost of this hesitation is rising depression, polarization, and a hunger for new myths, no matter how dangerous or absurd. When people are exposed to reality without preparation, they do not become rational philosophers. They become frightened animals searching for certainty. This is why the age of information has also become the age of conspiracy theories. Faced with a complex, indifferent world, many prefer a simple lie that flatters them over a complicated truth that ignores them. The mind craves narrative more than accuracy. If reality offers no story, people will invent one. This is not a failure of intelligence, it is a feature of human psychology. The danger emerges when technologies amplify this tendency at a planetary scale. Algorithms do not care about truth or meaning. They care about engagement. And fear, outrage, and tribal myths are far more engaging than sober realism. Thus, the clearer reality becomes, the more aggressively illusions fight back. Another hidden cost of seeing reality clearly is the fragmentation of identity. In the past, identity was given, not chosen. You were born into a religion, a nation, a role, and a story. Today, biology, culture, and history tell us that identity is fluid, constructed, and provisional. This insight is intellectually liberating but emotionally exhausting. When nothing is fixed, everything becomes a decision, and every decision becomes a burden. People are told they are free to reinvent themselves, yet they are rarely given the tools to withstand the anxiety of endless choice. Freedom without inner stability does not feel like freedom, it feels like drowning in possibilities. As traditional identities collapse, many rush toward rigid ideologies that promise clarity and belonging, even at the cost of violence or self-deception. Seeing reality as it is also forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about morality. There is no cosmic judge ensuring that good people are rewarded and bad people are punished. Nature is indifferent to justice. History shows that cruelty often succeeds and kindness often fails. This does not mean morality is meaningless, but it does mean it is fragile. Moral systems must be consciously built and constantly maintained. They do not flow automatically from the structure of the universe. For many, this realization is destabilizing. If morality is a human invention, then responsibility rests entirely on us. There is no higher authority to blame, no divine plan to hide behind. Such responsibility is heavy, and many prefer to escape it by surrendering their judgment to ideologies, leaders, or sacred texts that claim absolute certainty. Perhaps the most painful cost of seeing reality clearly is the confrontation with impermanence. Everything we love will change or disappear. Bodies age, civilizations collapse, and even species vanish. Earlier cultures wrapped this truth in rituals and afterlives, transforming loss into continuity. Modern science offers no such consolation. It tells us that death is final, and that the universe will not remember us. This knowledge can deepen compassion and urgency, but it can also drain life of color. When people are taught that nothing lasts and nothing has inherent meaning, many slide into quiet nihilism. They continue working, consuming, and scrolling, but without inner conviction. Societies can function for a time in this state, but they slowly lose the ability to make long-term sacrifices or shared commitments. Yet the solution is not to retreat into comforting lies. The challenge of our century is not how to avoid reality, but how to face it without collapsing. This requires a new kind of education, one that trains emotional resilience alongside critical thinking. People must learn not only how the world works, but how the human mind reacts when old stories dissolve. We need narratives that are honest yet humane, flexible yet grounding. Truth without compassion becomes cruelty, compassion without truth becomes delusion. Balancing the two is not easy, but it is unavoidable. Seeing reality as it is strips away guarantees, but it also opens a rare opportunity. If meaning is not given, it can be created. If morality is not written into the cosmos, it can be consciously designed. This does not make life easy, but it makes it ours. The hidden cost of clarity is pain, anxiety, and uncertainty. The hidden benefit is responsibility, freedom, and the possibility of wisdom. Whether we collapse under the weight of truth or grow strong enough to carry it will define not only individual lives, but the future of our species. We like to believe that seeing reality clearly is a blessing, that truth automatically liberates, that knowledge naturally empowers, and that understanding the world as it truly is will make us wiser, calmer, and more humane. Yet history suggests something more disturbing. Clear sight often comes with a heavy psychological, social, and moral cost. For most of human existence, survival depended not on accuracy, but on useful illusions. Myths, stories, gods, nations, and moral certainties were not flaws in our thinking, they were technologies of cooperation. They allowed millions of strangers to trust one another, to sacrifice for abstract ideas, and to endure suffering with a sense of purpose. When these shared stories begin to dissolve under the pressure of scientific scrutiny and data-driven realism, we do not simply gain clarity, we lose the glue that held societies together. As modern humans, we are increasingly trying to question everything. Algorithms encourage skepticism, education rewards doubt, and information flows expose contradictions in every belief system. The problem is not that reality is cruel, the problem is that reality is indifferent. It offers no built-in meaning, no moral compass, no promise that justice will prevail. When people realize this too clearly, too quickly, they do not become enlightened sages. More often, they become anxious, cynical, or nihilistic. The human mind did not evolve to stare directly into a meaningless universe. It evolved to hunt, to bond, to hope. Stripping away comforting narratives without providing new frameworks of meaning leaves a psychological vacuum. And vacuums are never empty for long. They are quickly filled by extremism, conspiracy theories, or blind devotion to strong leaders who promise certainty in an uncertain world. There is also a political cost to radical realism. Democracies depend on shared myths just as much as ancient empires did. The belief in equality, human rights, and national identity are not objective facts like gravity. They are collective stories we agree to treat as real. When people begin to see these stories as mere social constructs, commitment weakens. Why sacrifice for a nation if it is just an imagined community? Why defend human rights if they are not written into the laws of physics? Extreme realism can quietly erode civic responsibility. Citizens stop asking what is right and start asking what is real, forgetting that societies survive not on truth alone but on shared values that feel true enough to act upon. Technology accelerates this process dramatically. In previous eras, the collapse of old myths took centuries. Today, it can happen in a decade. Artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and big data are redefining what it means to be human. We are learning that many of our decisions are shaped by biochemical processes and algorithmic nudges rather than free will. This knowledge is accurate, but it is also destabilizing. If humans are just complex biological machines, on what basis do we hold anyone morally responsible? If algorithms understand us better than we understand ourselves, why trust personal judgment at all? Seeing reality through the lens of data can quietly reduce people to predictable patterns, undermining dignity and agency even as it increases efficiency. On a personal level, radical clarity can corrode inner life. Many people imagine that self-knowledge leads to peace, yet constant analysis often leads to paralysis. When every emotion is dissected, every desire traced to evolutionary roots, and every moral impulse reduced to survival strategies, life can start to feel mechanical. Love becomes a chemical reaction, ambition a genetic impulse, and suffering a neurological glitch. This perspective may be intellectually satisfying, but it can be emotionally impoverishing. Humans do not live by explanations alone. They live by experiences, symbols, and meanings that transcend raw data. A world fully explained is not necessarily a world worth inhabiting. There is also a deep inequality in who can afford to see reality as it is. For the privileged, realism can be an intellectual exercise. For the vulnerable, illusions are often psychological lifelines, telling someone that their suffering has no cosmic meaning, that history offers no moral arc, and that justice is not guaranteed can be devastating if they lack economic security or social support. When elites celebrate brutal honesty and hard truths, they often underestimate how much social stability depends on hope. A society that dismantles illusions without addressing inequality risks replacing shared myths with shared despair. None of this means that truth is the enemy or that ignorance should be preserved. The danger lies in mistaking accuracy for wisdom, Wisdom is not just about seeing clearly, it is about knowing how much clarity a human system, individual or collective, can absorb without breaking. Previous religions and ideologies understood this intuitively. They filtered reality through rituals, ethics, and narratives that made it bearable. Modern society, intoxicated by data and transparency, often removes the filters without building replacements. We are left with unprecedented knowledge and unprecedented confusion. The hidden cost of seeing reality as it is, then, is not that reality is false, but that humans are fragile. When the stories that once gave meaning dissolve, we must consciously design new ones, or risk letting power, technology, and fear write them for us. The challenge of the 21st century is not merely to understand the world, but to decide which truths should guide our lives and which should remain background noise. Because a species that sees everything clearly but knows nothing worth living for is not enlightened. It is lost. As we move forward into an age of unprecedented knowledge, the real question is not how much reality we can uncover, but how wisely we can live with it. Seeing the world clearly does not automatically make us stronger, kinder, or more united. Without shared meaning, truth can fragment societies, exhaust minds, and empty lives of purpose. The task ahead is not to return to old illusions, but to consciously shape new frameworks of meaning that can coexist with scientific understanding. Only then can clarity serve humanity instead of quietly eroding it. Thank you to my viewers and my audience for giving your time, attention, and thought to these ideas. In a world full of noise and distraction, your willingness to reflect deeply is rare and valuable. Your presence here matters more than you might realize.
I read in an interview that you gave The Guardian, they asked you the greatest regret of your life. And you said not being open about your sexuality earlier.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why it's my biggest regret?
Yes.
Or why? Because I think that the pain of kind of living in denial to myself. I mean, when I say it's a regret not coming out, it's not to other people, it's to myself. And looking back, the writing was on the wall when I was like 14, 15 for sure. Like if I would be on the beach, I would definitely look at the guys, not at the girls. But I couldn't acknowledge it. Like I had a divided mind that one part of the mind knew absolutely 100%, and the other part of the mind had absolutely no idea. And again, it was just too much to handle, I guess. But this situation of living in denial and in repression of myself, just looking back, it was a lot of painful years. Most information in the world is junk.
In just a word or two, explain why modern AI might destroy democracy.
The key issue is that democracy is based on trust, whereas dictatorship is based on terror.
This extremely cynical view of humans is not true.
What you've done in your recent book, Nexus.
The book is about the history of information.
To offer a different lens for information.
Information isn't truth.
It's not a question of helpful or dangerous. It's the magnitude of the change. We need more boring politicians, for instance.
For sure.
Suffering is the rejection of reality. One of the last stories that still connects everybody is the story of money.
This whole problem becomes much greater with AI.
AIs can make decisions. They are not just tools in our hands. They are agents creating new realities.
$7,000, $25,000 unarmed civilian. Just keep it like you know.
The thing is that this is just, extremely primitive AIs. The algorithms, the AIs that manage the social media platforms, they are just the first generation. We haven't seen anything yet. In 10 or 20 years, we will have far more powerful AIs, and we need to start thinking very seriously, how do we manage that? Again, understanding that these are not tools in our hands, these are agents that can make decisions that we can't anticipate, that can invent new ideas from new texts to new financial devices that really go beyond the human imagination.